When it comes to computer sound from back in the early to mid 90s, the Sound Blaster by Creative Labs is the product that most people will remember. And rightly so, was the first all-in-one sound card combining digital audio, FM music, and a joystick interface. Just about every game released was designed to support it, and that made the name Sound Blaster synonymous with sound card for the majority of people out there. But the truth is, not everyone had a Sound Blaster. Despite selecting it many times in game setup menus, many people had clones based on any one of dozens of chipsets that were Sound Blaster compatible. One such manufacturer was ESS, a company still around today. They released their famous audio drive line of sound cards back in 1993, but they were really best known for their 16-bit chipsets that were released in 1995. Unlike some clones plagued with flaky compatibility and pretty terrible FM synthesis, cards based on ESS chips were some of the best. They were known to have great Sound Blaster compatibility, and their FM sound was very close to real Yamaha OPL3, not to mention that some of the models had a more advanced FM synthesis mode called ESFM, which I will talk more about later. On top of all that, they had an MPU401 MIDI interface that just worked and wasn't full of annoying bugs. ESS managed to keep their costs down by integrating many discrete components found on sound cards of the day into only one or two chip solutions with simplified PCB designs. I have no doubt that this, combined with their great compatibility, contributed to their popularity with OEMs, especially Compaq, who used ESS chips in many of their systems. But unfortunately, as great as the ESS chipsets were, they found their way mainly onto budget-minded sound cards where corners were cut and sound quality just really wasn't top of mind. And that also means that they were often sparse when it came to expansion, connectors, and things like that. There were a few exceptions over the years, but you really won't find ESS chips on higher-end cards by Turtle Beach and other top-tier manufacturers. And that's really where today's card here comes in. Inside this plain-looking brown box is the product of lots of hard work, dedication, and a true love of retro PC hardware. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the MK1869, a brand new ISA sound card being produced today. It was created by Edro and Leo, the makers of the PC MIDI card and the Orpheus and Orpheus II, which are well known in the retro PC community. Big thanks to Edro and Leo for sending me this review sample. Just to be clear, I wasn't paid for this review, but I did receive the card for free and get to keep it. As always, you will get my completely honest opinion. For those who don't know Edro and Leo, they've been around for ages on the Vogons forum as Marms and Karopi. Edro is from Portugal and Leo is from Greece. Despite them being 3,000 kilometers apart, they collaborated successfully on their first project over 10 years ago, the well-known PC MIDI interface card. Today, they have 11 different projects listed on their site. Although they're both skilled in electronics, Edro takes care of the research and design, and Leo works more on the production side of things. Although they have their own day jobs keeping them busy, they just keep cranking out these awesome new designs, and I'm always excited to see what they're working on. So here it is, the MK1869. What a beautiful looking card. Very nice matte black PCB with gold accents. Very compact too, just the length of an ISA slot. Construction looks really high quality. Got super clean soldering on here. And I can see some audio grade Nichicon capacitors here too, just like the Orpheus cards. The MK1869, like the name suggests, is based on the ESS-1869 chipset. ESS was best known for the 1868, but the 1869 is very similar, basically just an upgraded version that came out about a year later in 1996. Big difference is that it supports higher sampling rates up to 48 kilohertz, and I believe it supports some form of 3D audio as well, but aside from that, more or less the same as the 1868, which is a very good thing. There are a couple variations of the ES1869 out there. This one is the ES1869S, a smaller space-saving version of the more common 1869F. Functionally, they are identical, the S variant likely just designed for laptops or more compact systems. Moving on, you'll notice that there are actually two ESS chips on this PCB. The card includes the ES690F, which is a wavetable chip. I'll play some samples soon, but this is actually one of the better wavetable chips in my opinion. There is a large ROM right next to it here, and that stores the 1 megabyte of samples from ESS. The ES690F is very similar to the ES692S, which I'm more familiar with. Big difference aside from the size of the chip itself is that the 692 has 1 megabyte of samples built right in, and it doesn't need that external ROM. But aside from that, there really is no functional difference at all between them. 692 is used on the E-Wave daughter board from Certishop, and I also have it here on this compact business wavetable card that is also based on the ES1869, making it the closest retro card I have to it, really. But that's probably where the similarities end, because the compact card is very basic, doesn't have a wavetable header, only one internal audio connector. Yeah, pretty typical for OEMs at that time. And in fact, most cards I've seen that include onboard wavetable chips don't include wavetable headers, so this is definitely a great feature. The wavetable header on the MK1869 is located at the top left corner of the card. Plenty of room for high-quality daughter boards like the X2GS and even some of the much larger ones. The header placement also allows them to extend past the edge of the card, so it doesn't actually interfere with any jumpers or add-on modules, which I will get into in a bit. There's even a hole here for one of the standard support post locations, which is great because it helps to keep the really big ones secured. This big long connector down here, as you can probably guess, connects pin for pin to the ISA slot. It's intended for expansion modules to add additional features to the card. This is actually very similar to what the original Gravis Ultrasound had. On that card, it was for a special daughter board that enabled recording capabilities. But this header isn't just for future use. Edro and Leo have already created an expansion board for the MK1869. This is the PC MIDI add-on module. Basically the exact same thing as the standalone 8-bit ISA card that they make, and attaching it to the header effectively gets it on the ISA bus without using any extra slots. This 6-pin I/O header here plumbs the MIDI and audio signals directly into the card, so there are no extra cables required. But if you're not interested in intelligent mode, the ESS-1869's UART mode MPU401 is excellent. It's considered bug-free and works a lot better than what's found on Sound Blasters and many other cards out there. But having both interfaces on the card for a dual MPU401 setup is actually pretty cool, and the MK1869 provides the flexibility to use both pretty much any way you want to. This yellow jumper bank here can be used to select which one to use for each MIDI interface, including the rear jack, the gain port, with separate control for both MIDI in and out, and the wavetable header. I'm not going to get too much into the PC MIDI functionality in this video today, since I did cover it quite a bit in the Orpheus II LT video, but be sure to check out the description for a link if you'd like to learn some more about it. Moving on to the top of the card here, we have 3 audio headers. You've got your standard CD-ROM audio interface, one for PC speaker, which is nice to have. Not many cards actually include this, especially ESS-based cards. And last but not least, something you'll never find on retro ISA sound cards, well, because the standard didn't exist back in those days. This is an AC97 front panel audio header. So if you're using a newer case for your retro PC build, you can connect your front panel headphone and microphone connectors here. Really cool feature. One thing to note though, there is no microphone input jack on the rear of the card. Hardly anyone uses a mic on a retro PC these days anyway, but if you needed to use one, you could always get that working through the AC97 header. Speaking of the rear connectors, we've got a line in and line out connector. Line out is obviously not amplified, which is ideal for audio quality. There is also a 3.5mm MIDI out jack here, which is awesome. You get a short DIN adapter cable included with the card, so no need to use those big clunky game port adapter cables. But you can actually use both if you have multiple external MIDI modules, which is really cool. You don't have to use pass-through or a MIDI splitter. You can just connect them directly to the card. And last but not least, a very non-retro USB-C port. If you follow the traces, you'll find they connect 2 pins on the I/O expansion header. So at the time of this video, USB isn't actually being used for anything, but it does open up the possibility for some very interesting future expansion options. And it really wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing some homebrew created solutions here. Edro and Leo provide the pinouts, and there's really nothing stopping anyone from creating their own expansion card. Maybe a USB mouse adapter, USB power output. Who knows? Lots of possibilities here. As usual, Edro and Leo have added tons of great information about the MK1869 on the product page. You've got detailed information on all the jumpers, connectors, as well as links to the drivers. For DOS, you can use the usual ESS CFG and ESS Vol utilities. They do work, but I'd recommend checking out Unisound instead. Unisound's basically a third-party sound initialization tool that supports many different cards and was created by Jays Fox. Just make sure you're using version 0.82a or later so that you can adjust the volume of the input used by the wavetable header. If you check out the help screen for Unisound, you'll get an idea of all the volume adjustments that you can do. There's also an option to disable the 3D audio effects from here. As with any retro ISA sound card, it's a good idea to mute all of the unused inputs so that it will sound as clean as possible. On the product page, you'll find drivers for Windows 3.1, 95, 98, even NT and OS2. But for my testing today, I'm going to be sticking with good old MS-DOS. So here's the card installed in my sound testing rig. The motherboard is an ECS P5VX-A that's based on the Intel 430VX chipset. It has a Pentium 133 in the socket, 16 megabytes of SD RAM, and 512 kilobytes of cache. And I've got DOS 6.22 installed on a compact flash card. Before showing what the MK1869 can do, I want to quickly touch on audio quality. Although the ES1869 is a great chip, it isn't quite as capable as the Crystal 4237 used in the Orpheus cards, at least when it comes to DAC quality. So getting the most out of it took some extra effort. Edro and Leo went through several revisions, constantly refining the design to squeeze out the very best possible sound, and they even did a last-minute rework of the analog output stage, borrowing ideas from the Orpheus. It added a little bit to the cost, but the sound quality gains made it very worthwhile. Their goal with the MK1869 was to surpass even the best ESS cards out there, like the Teratech 1696 Gold and Compact's audio feature card. And that actually turned out to be the easy part, because those cards were better than average, but weren't really exceptional. Most ESS cards follow the old reference design to some degree, and as Leo put it, that design was 90s good, not really good enough for the speakers and headphones that we use these days. With the MK1869, they've really pushed this chip to its limits. This is one of the cleanest ISA sound cards I've ever heard. Definitely the best sounding ESS card out there. And when you combine that level of sound quality with the classic ESS strengths like ESFM, solid MPU 401, great compatibility, not to mention the wavetable chip, talk about ticking all of the right boxes. Capturing that clean sound, though, was a bit tricky for me. Headphones straight into the card, super clean, but recording through my usual capture gear just introduced all kinds of noise. I ended up using my Focusrite 2i2 audio interface instead, and I used a good quality cable. Still wasn't quite as clean as direct listening, and YouTube compression and level adjustments definitely won't help, so please keep this in mind when you listen to the recordings. But anyway, enough of that, let's dig into some games. First up is Duke Nukem 2, which relies on ADPCM for its sound effects. The ES1869 handles it perfectly, unlike many Sound Blaster clones that lack proper ADPCM support.
I am back.
And of course, it wouldn't be a sound card review without playing some Doom. Here it is with the classic FM synthesis that we all know and love. The ESS compatible or legacy FM mode is very close to real Yamaha OPL3 and sounds great. But with the MK1869, you are not limited to FM. You can enjoy the beautiful general MIDI capability of the ES-690. Here is Doom 2, released in 1994.
Trouble.
But as much as I love Doom 2, Heretic is probably one of my favorite games for general MIDI music. I don't know about you, but I think the ES690 sounds just fantastic in this game. Another one of my favorites is Descent, such an awesome MIDI soundtrack, and the ES690 does not disappoint. Speaking of Descent, I wanted to take a moment and call out some known issues with games that use the HMI audio drivers. Descent is one of them, but there are many others out there. Phil from Phil's Computer Lab discussed this issue in his review of the MK1869, but I do think it's important, so I'm going to touch on it here as well. These games have an ESS-specific option for digital PCM audio, which you'd think would be the best choice for an ESS card, but the sound quality is really bad with this option compared to the Sound Blaster or Sound Blaster Pro compatibility modes.
0, 0, 0.
This sometimes gives people the wrong impression that ESS cards just don't sound as good as Sound Blasters and other cards, and that simply isn't the case. It's not the card or the ESS chip that's to blame, it's just the HMI system's poor driver support.
0, 0, 0.
But thankfully, it's really easy to work around this issue in games like Descent. The ESS cards have great Sound Blaster Pro compatibility, which will give you stereo sound and much better PCM audio. Just be aware that the Sound Blaster Pro does have reverse channels where the ESS cards do not, so you'll need to reverse them if you have that option. It's unfortunate that games using the HMI audio system don't fully take advantage of ESS's PCM capabilities, but thankfully many titles built on the Miles sound system do. Most newer Miles-based games already support the ES1868 and 69, but for older ones, there's a patched driver that adds support if it's not already there. This gives you cleaner digital audio than the standard Sound Blaster Pro option. But honestly, what's more interesting than ESS's subtle PCM improvements is their enhanced FM synthesis called ESFM. The difference over OPL compatibility mode is immediately noticeable, so let's jump into a couple of games that really show what ESFM can do. The first game we'll take a look at is a new one for me. It's called The Gene Machine, a Victorian-era point-and-click adventure game released in 1996. It's got great animation, and it's been fun to play so far. This one does use the Miles sound system.
Piers Featherstone Hall, gentleman and hero, is due to return from the Americas, having completed a secret mission of the utmost importance to the British Empire. If anyone can help me, this man can.
Another game that makes great use of ESFM is Settlers 2. I'm going to do some comparisons here using the in-game MIDI player. I'm going to play some ESFM, then compatible mode, which is basically the same as OPL, and for good measure I'll throw in some general MIDI using the ES690. And hate to be unoriginal because everyone loves to play track 14 of this game to showcase ESFM, but after listening to them all, it's definitely the best track, so I'll go with that one too. Really big difference between ESFM and what you'd get from an OPL 2 or 3. Best way I can describe it is that ESFM sounds a bit more musical, less computery. But don't get me wrong, I will always have a special place in my heart for Yamaha's FM synthesis. It is a unique sound that is legendary. The DOS Days site has a great list of 86 games with ESS audio support, But most of those games came out in 1996 or later. ESFM showed up very late to the party because by then, a lot of games had already moved away from MIDI in favor of CD audio or mod music. Still a really cool technology though. It's great to finally experience it today, especially since most of us, myself included, never had the chance to hear it back in the day. After hearing all of that awesome sound, let's go back to the basics here. Good old PC speaker. Having that little lo-fi buzzer in your PC case is definitely the way PC speaker was intended, but having an input for it is great because you can record sound from old games without having to use a microphone sitting next to your case. To get this working, I crimped up a very basic 4 to 2 pin DuPont style connector here. And if you don't get sound, just reverse the polarity and it should work fine. Here is Commander Keen 2, which only supports PC speaker audio. Next thing I want to try out on the MK1869 is the wavetable header. I'm going to be using the Yamaha DB50 XG for testing here today. Huge thanks to a work colleague of mine, Rudolf from the Netherlands. He sent me this board a couple of years ago, and he is actually the original owner from back in the 90s, which makes it even more special. Really appreciate it, Rudolf. Thanks again. I am hoping to take a closer look at this impressive wavetable card in the future. Now, normally selecting General MIDI would play the onboard ES690, so you may think it would be necessary to disable it if you're going to use the wavetable header. And that is an option. You can use J6 on the card for this purpose, and it does simplify things a bit. But it's nice to be able to enjoy both, and thankfully you can switch between the two. This is done by simply muting one or the other through the internal mixer. The important thing to know is that the ES690 wavetable chip shares the same input on the mixer as the FM synthesis on the card, and the wavetable connector uses a different input, which is called aux-B. If we take a look in Unisound here, FM and the ES690 are controlled by the volume switch VF, and aux-B is controlled by the switch VB. To use the wavetable header, you would just set VF to 0 and turn up the volume on VB, and vice versa for the ES690. Just don't forget to turn VF back up again if you want to play some games with FM music. If you do go this route, I'd suggest creating some batch files so you can just easily switch between them. Here is Duke Nukem 3D played on the MK1869 with the Yamaha DB50 XG. Next, let's give a couple of external MIDI modules a try. I'm going to use the 3.5mm to DIN adapter that was provided because it's awesome. And I'm going to try the ESS MPU 401 UART interface here first. And I have the jumper on the card set correctly for that, by the way. So this here is a pretty typical MIDI setup. I've got MIDI out to the sound canvas, and then I've got an RCA to 3.5mm cable that's piping the audio signal back into the sound card's line-in jack so that it can get mixed in again. Here is Hocus Pocus using the Roland SC55 ST. After playing for a while, there were no strained audio artifacts or hanging notes, just beautiful, clean MIDI, just the way it was meant to be. Another reason an audio drive card is a great choice over a Sound Blaster if you are into MIDI music. But if you have an MT32 or the computer music version like I do here, the PC MIDI add-on will give you intelligent mode MPU 401, so there's no need to use soft MPU or the patches and tweaks that are sometimes needed to get the games working properly. They should all just work straight out of the box with minimal fuss. Here is Space Quest 3 from Sierra, released back in 1989. Well, there you have it, the MK1869. I think that Edro and Leo have a real winner here. Legendary ESS compatibility and features in a unique sound quality focused package, something that just didn't exist back in the day. You get a great sounding wavetable chip right on the card, a wavetable header, awesome MIDI connectivity options, bug-free MPU 401 interface, PC speaker input, and even AC97. Because it's a brand new card, it will just work. No reliability issues due to aging components, no exploding tantalum capacitors, and of course, it's backed by two great guys who will always stand behind their creations and will go out of their way to help you if you run into any problems. Just like the Orpheus, this thing ticks all the right boxes, but it does so at a much lower price point. At the time of this video, the MK1869 is selling for 130 euros, and it is important to remember that that price includes free worldwide shipping. So kind of a big deal, especially here in Canada, where we get burned all the time on high international shipping costs. Compare that to the 220 euros the Orpheus II LT was going for. That's a pretty big difference. Separating out the PC MIDI components on the optional add-on module was a really smart design decision, because not everybody really needs those features, but if you do, the add-on module can be purchased for an additional 80 euros, which is still cheaper than buying the dedicated PC MIDI card. And it saves you an ISA slot too. Sure, you can get an ESS audio drive card on eBay for a fraction of that cost, but trust me, it will not be anything like the MK1869. So if you're building a retro rig and you're serious about sound and MIDI, I can highly recommend this card. Oh, and if you thought the MK1869 looked awesome, just wait until you see the MK1869 Xtreme, inspired by the Gravis Ultrasound Xtreme, but with an ES1869 and an AMD interwave. Very exciting. Edro and Leo are very close to completing it, so keep your eyes open for that one as well. That's it for today. Big thanks to Edro and Leo for sending me this card for review, and if you enjoy my content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again.